Hey, welcome back to the Soul Pod. This is Stacy. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold, so I don't sound quite like me today. If I sound a bit off, that's why. Today, I want to talk about, if you're wondering what it is about science that makes science unnecessarily limit itself, this one might be for you. It's at the risk of annoying more scientifically minded people. I'm going to keep talking about these different topics I find interesting that are kind of in that strange spot where science comes together with, what you call pseudoscience, what some would call pseudoscience. I just call unexplored sections of science. There are these things that are absolutely wacky and completely out there, and those things that can be absolutely proven without a doubt, using the materialist model. And then there's all that stuff in the middle there. These things, right? That's the stuff that I love to look at, and that's the stuff that I think we lose out a lot on by not looking at and by shunning those who do look at it because it doesn't fit the materialist model, which is, of course, a guide, a set of rules and laws that we've made up ourselves. We've created this path we must stay upon, and then anyone that gets too far off that path gets spanked, of course. So again, at the risk of annoying scientifically minded people, let me just say right off the top, you're welcome to comment, you're welcome to share your thoughts, you're welcome to tell me why I'm wrong. That's okay. I'm not saying I'm right. I just want to clarify that right off the top. I don't know if I'm right. um, if we're using your method, which your campus created, the religion of science, the dogma that you approach it from, which I know also annoys you people, um, yeah, then that's right. But sort of you telling me that I'm wrong is also sort of like a Christian telling me I'm a sinner if I'm an atheist. Based on your set of logic and knowledge and your belief system, okay, I'm wrong. I'm just going to take that right now. I don't care. I'm all right with that because that's not why I'm looking at this. I'm not looking at this to prove myself right or to prove anyone else wrong. The reason I look at these things is because I find them fascinating and I find them delicious and I find them part of the human experience, the journey. Really, what is more amazing about this life than wonder? Wonder. Wonder is what makes this life so yummy, so wonderful, such a lovely adventure. Just the wonder of it all, the not understanding the most simple things. Look at a child playing with grass or looking at a bug. The wonder that is inside of us that we walk away from when we create these ridiculous guardrails, these paths that we must stay upon. They're ridiculous. They're silly. They're man made constructs and they're waste. Because when we stay on them, we miss out on a lot of interesting stuff. We just, we miss it. Think of all the amazing things that we've proven that once we did not know. And, had we ignored them because we couldn't prove them at that time, what would have happened? Now imagine what else? What else haven't we discovered yet? What else haven't we discovered yet? We'll come back to that. Today, I want to dive into some work by Rupert Sheldrake, the British scientist. Really interesting guy. He wrote a book called Dogs That Know When Their Owners Are Coming Home. And it dives into the often attacked area of telepathy, telepathic communications, the ability for one entity to sort of read the mind of another entity or the intentions. And Sheldrake did this amazing study where he had instructed all these different pet owners, I think mostly, if not all, dog, to go home at different times. Right? They would all carry. This is so far back that they had them carrying pagers, and they would page them and have them go home at a different time than they normally would from work or wherever they were out, and would also instruct them to not take the same car, to take a taxi or get a ride from somebody else, so the animal didn't pick up on the sound of their vehicle, so they could sort of eliminate that as one of those things. And these are all people who say, I think my dog knows when I'm coming home. So he tested all these folks, and there was some very random stuff that happened, like they would get up, get ready to leave work, and then actually have to return to work. But what they had is they also had the ability to, while they were doing this, they were monitoring what the dogs were doing at home. So they knew the dogs at the moment, and this is very consistent, the moment that these owners had made the decision to leave home from work, which was in many cases quite a distance away, The dog's demeanor changed immediately at the moment they made the decision, not even at the time they left work, but at the moment they made the decision to leave work, the moment they get the page, the dogs would immediately go to the door, or go outside, or wait where they would normally wait for their owner to come home. And there were many instances where the people were recalled to work for some reason. They got a follow up where they said, "Oh, you have to go back." And so they may have decided to go. They were making their way to their car, and then they said, "Oh no, you need to come back in." And so they're like, "Okay." They paused and went back in. And at those moments, they could also see that the pets at that moment would lose interest in waiting for the their owner to come home, and somehow know that that was happening at a distance, at a great distance in many cases. That's pretty amazing. That's really quite amazing. And so he wrote an entire book about it, as a question, as a scientist. It's like, hey, this is what I looked into and this is what happened. What do we make of this? Of course, all the scientific minded people dogpiled on Sheldrake, and they've been trying to destroy his career pretty much ever since, uh, but he continues to ask the hard questions. And I love that about Sheldrake. He's an interesting human. One of the things that kind of, got Sheldrake's attention was that with this whole concept of morphic resonance. Let me see if I can explain the morphic fields in a really basic way. Um, Basically, Sheldrake said there's sort of an invisible field in the universe. I don't know. Think of it like radio waves, but it's not really like that. It's just this overlay of maybe knowledge that shapes and develops behaviors of biological forms, of habits, of social systems, learning, knowledge, everything. It sort of influences everything, right? And this sort of plays into the telepathy thing with the dogs a little bit. But one example is that in the 1920s, there's this guy, Dr. William McDougall. I think it was Dr. McDougall. Um, he trained rats to escape from this dark maze. And it was a water maze, which is even more complicated. And the escape route for it was a sort of a ramp that was not illuminated, right? So it was like this sort of invisible in a way. But over generations of these rats' lives, the rats would each generation knew better than the next generation how to get out of this maze. It was a fairly complicated maze. And it seemed to be that they were passing on information generation to generation. But that's not the amazing part. The amazing part was that at the same time, other rats of the same species were also learning how to do the same thing at a distance, meaning they'd never been exposed to this rat family, this rat line. They were not a part of the same lineage. They weren't related biologically, as offspring of these. And that made McDougall kind of wonder, like, why is this that, if you have one group of this species learning something, that this entirely other group of this species learns it more quickly. And he started seeing that more and more in other species, in particular mammals. And you also see the same thing when, like Sheldrake had mentioned, when you grow crystals. If you grow a whole new type of crystal, it's really hard to get them to grow the first time. But after the crystal figures out how to grow the first time, the next time you try to grow them, it's much faster, and then much faster. Each time you try to grow that line of crystals, it's even more. So again, there's some sort of memory or something. There's some sort of field, some invisible something that's untouchable, unreachable, that somehow still seems to have an effect on these things. I find that fascinating. Sheldrake surely found that fascinating, still does, still out there doing his thing. But you see, his research bothers materialists, even though it doesn't challenge the materialist model. It doesn't say, "Hey, look at this thing. If this is true," which materialists clearly aren't going to acknowledge. But if this is true, what does it mean, right? If it's true, though, it doesn't negate the truth that anything that can be proven within the materialist model that's acceptable. It's totally reasonable. Why would you throw out something that's clearly provable? And the materialist model shows us the things that can be proven. It doesn't show us that it certainly doesn't say that if it can't be proven, well, it tries to say that if it can't be proven, it doesn't exist on some level. It's not an exact quote. don't dogpile on me about that. But essentially, what it is materialists will throw out anything that doesn't fit within the model. It can't be proven within the model. They just sort of set it aside, right? We've talked about this in previous videos. But that's not what Sheldrake's saying. Sheldrake's not saying, okay, this is probably a thing, even though we can't measure it. So the materialist model doesn't exist. He said, oh, in addition to the materialist model, let's look at this stuff. This is kind of cool. So it's the materialist model provable stuff, the stuff that absolutely I don't know if we can ever prove it. And then there's that stuff that, man, we're really close. That's the stuff he's talking about. All that stuff in the middle that is fascinating as hell. Like I talked about telepathy on the telepathy tapes before, that's one of those things. And the fact that, if you've ever had a pet, my dog always knew when I was coming home. I had a girlfriend that my dog lived with after we split up. We remained good friends. And she would always say, hey, are you on your way over? At some random time. And I go, yeah, how do you know? And she goes, oh, your dog's at the door. My dog always knew when I was coming back. And I was very infrequent about it. It was very odd times. Sometimes it was consistent. Sometimes it was incredibly odd times. So when I heard this research, I was like, yeah, that makes perfect freaking sense to me. I think like a lot of us with a lot of these things that some would call paranormal, which call it paranormal if you want. It's kind of a loaded word. I would say it's normal. It's it's normal. It's just not explainable. Things like a friend calling you when you're thinking about them, or getting that text at that very moment that you're thinking, oh, I should reach out to Betty. Boom, hey Betty. Uh, it's stuff like that these things happen, and we have to stop and wonder, what the heck does that mean? Do we throw it out because it can't be proven? You know that even now there is no scientific explanation for gravity. There's no one accepted explanation for what causes gravity. Let that sink in. That is the greatest mystery in science. Now, scientists will tell you, oh, there's plenty of evidence, and all that. Yeah, there's evidence, of course. That's what Newton was talking about. Well, there's a sort of an accepted. No, there's not. There's no consensus on what causes gravity. There's a lot of discussion about it. But think about it, something that is such a huge part of our life that we still can't explain. But are we saying, oh, we got to throw that out? Gravity's bullshit. No, of course not. That'd be stupid. And I think it's stupid to throw out things that we don't understand, because we're losing out on the exploration of something great that may lead to other great things, just simply because we have a closed mind. We have this ridiculous dogma approach that science has laid down and insists upon its people following. And they say that, there's this beautiful saying that science grows one death at a time, which means essentially as the old line of scientists dies off, people become a little more open-minded, and more new knowledge is able to come in. I think we need more and more of that. Not that I'm hoping all scientists die, but come on, guys, lighten up. This is a wonderful adventure. Pull a stick out of your ass. Have a good time. Life doesn't have to be so rough and uncomfortable and rigid. It should be a blast. It should be wonder, shouldn't it? Sheldrake said this one lovely thing, and it was the quote was something like, "Science is based on the idea that give me one great miracle and we'll do the rest." Essentially, what he's talking about was, if you look at the scientific method, you've got this whole concept of the Big Bang theory being the beginning of it all. Big Bang theory. Okay, so scientists go, okay, cool. We're going to sort of accept this Big Bang theory thing. Cool. Can't be proven, but we'll go ahead and do that. And now we're going to use the materialist model, and we're going to explain everything else to you. We're going to make it simple. Yay. But think of the ridiculousness of that. At the base of science, at the base of the materialist model, is one freaking miracle that science can't explain. It's just a theory. Somehow everything that came into existence in a pop. In a pop. But everything after that, we'll go ahead and explain that to you. We'll figure out a way to explain that to you. Now, they don't throw out the Big Bang theory because it can't be explained. Instead, it stays this theory that they sort of all accept. Isn't that silly? I think that's silly. At any rate, check out Rupert Sheldrake's book, Dogs That Know Their Owners Are Coming Home. And really, Watch any video from this guy. Listen to any podcast he's ever been on. He's freaking brilliant. And he's great to listen to. If you're wondering about all the magical stuff happening in the world, the stuff that seems spiritual in nature, maybe it is spiritual in nature. And again, maybe spiritual is just part of nature. This is just part of the human journey. This sense of awe and wonder and beauty. That's stuff that really gets you right there. Thanks for being here. I'm glad you guys are, and I appreciate you as an audience, and as people who chime in. Even if you disagree with me, I don't care. It's all fine. My ego isn't hurt by disagreement. Keep commenting in the comments below. If you haven't checked out the Soul Podcast yet, check it out. I think you'll like it a lot. Starting to work on season number 4 now, but I've got 3 seasons out there for you to listen to if you like checking out topics a little like this, but even more sort of diving into the spiritual side of things and the human journey and meaning and purpose and tools for a more joyful life. Check out the Soul Podcast. If you like it, yeah, man, give me a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It's the only way my show grows. Thanks for being here, and we'll talk to you, well, me and my soul. We'll talk to you soon.